nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item is calling of the roll. I would like to clarify that I'm here. I'm here.
I'm
Director
here
Robert.
as the backup
Ooh,
for the committee.
very capable backup. Are there anyone wishing to make public comment here today? Anybody online want to make public comment? Okay, the next item is the approval of the minutes for the May 6th meeting. Jeff was not here, was Director Robertson, but and I was attending remotely. So if we can just defer this approval until next meeting. All right, launching into the new business, we have 4A, fire hydrant operations and maintenance overview. Damon, you want to come forward?
Good afternoon, directors. So this is a presentation that we've provided to the engineering committee in the past, and I want to thank the chiefs for coming out, Chief Herzog, Chief Johnson. It's always good to provide a refresher to the engineering committee relative to fire hydrant O&M chief parts. So as you all can imagine, and I think, things that have happened in recent California history have brought to the forefront the relationship between water districts and fire departments is critically important. Not only during routine days, but also it's heightened during emergencies. And so this presentation kind of gives an overview of how CCWD works with all the chiefs and their staff to make sure our fire hydrants are up and operating. So just a quick overview of CCWD. I think you guys have seen this slide before. Over 13,000 water connections, over 30,000 residents served. We have 6 water systems, 13 independent wastewater systems, soon to be 12. There's a lot going on, a lot of infrastructure across the county that we're responsible for. And so fire hydrant O&M is another key component to ensure the success of our distribution systems. We have 2,265 fire hydrants across those 6 water systems. And so we work with the fire departments and their staff to have those inspected annually. So we pay a little under $60,000 a year to the fire chiefs and their teams so that they can go out and inspect these and report back to us their condition. So part of that effort includes training on behalf of CCWD staff for new and volunteer fire folks and interns, summer interns, so that we can ensure that the water system stays intact while they inspect and check these fire hydrants. So here's an image of a previous supervisor out in the field conducting one of those training sessions. And then I'll just, so. Okay, gotcha. So one of the challenges that we have out at Copperopolis and in the Jenny Lind water system is the presence of naturally occurring iron and manganese in the system. So how those systems are flushed is really important. If when the hydrant is inspected, if the folks just kick the hydrant on full bore, they can stir up settled manganese for hundreds of yards, if not thousands of yards in the system. That takes hours to evacuate. And so we work with the team to make sure that that doesn't happen. Here's an image. You can see the glasses of settled manganese in the public water supply. So this is treated water, that microscopic manganese that's over time built up at the bottom of the water main. And then it gets stirred up when the velocity of the main increases. and it can end up in folks' taps. We don't want that to happen. So we work really closely with the fire folks to make sure that when they do inspect the hydrant, they focus on just basically giving it a burp test or a squirt test, evacuate some of the water that's just in the hydrant itself, and then statically pressure test it. So these images illustrate Chief Johnson was helpful, super helpful to our team about 6-8 months ago. Wintertime, yeah. So our distribution crew went out with his interns up on the pass, and we went through some fire hydrant testing, super helpful. I think it helped our folks develop a rapport with the interns, which is really important. It has to happen throughout the organizations. And to this day, we get notifications here at the district. Every time your folks are out in the field to inspect, yeah, we get a phone call. We put our folks on notice so they can go touch base with whoever's going to inspect a fire hydrant. It's really helpful, and it keeps all of our folks informed. And so this is an image of our supervisor up on the pass during the wintertime, Joe Darby, just kind of showing everybody how he would like to see things take place when it comes to fire hydrant inspections. So what are the hydrants inspected for? This is an illustration of a sheet that came from the Calaveras Consolidated. I think it was Jenny Lind, their inspection form that they use. So they're going to look at operating condition, the ease of access to the hydrant, roadway reflectors, burrs on is the cap hard to get on, get off? Is the stem lubed? They're going to log the static pressure and then note any anomalies. And this document actually informs our distribution and construction crews for hydrant replacements and hydrant rebuilds. So the image on the left is a bagged hydrant, out of service hydrant. And then the image on the right, as you can see, our distribution folks tearing a hydrant down to rebuild it, to put it back in service. And so, the interrelationship between the fire folks and our distribution crews for that effort is super, super important. One of the challenges that we face throughout our water systems is a lot of the hydrants don't have guard valves or isolation valves. Oh, you're good. And Chief Dickinson, this is a kind of an illustration of one of those incidents. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a resident on Brooks in Rancho. We had an out of service hydrant with a guard valve that was circumspect. We didn't know where the leak was coming from. Was it coming on the runner or was it coming off of the guard valve? And so what can happen is if it's a guard valve and you have to replace that, or if you have to install a new guard valve, you can end up having to take thousands of people out of water. And so what we generally try to do is we try to focus on the low hanging fruit, if you will, replace hydrants, install guard valves where shutdowns are small and we can contain them. And then we sometimes, if we have the ability, we can hot tap a valve in to avoid like a larger shutdown of thousands. So guard valves are as important in the fire hydrant.
Can you explain what a guard valve is? That's synonymous with the isolation valve?
Yeah, so it's really an isolation valve. So it's kind of hard isn't the best image, but what's going on here in these images on the screen is our construction crew is going to install a hydrant runner. And so what happens is you take a T off a main and you put a valve there and you shut that valve and then you can run pipe to a fire hydrant. And it allows you to keep the rest of the system active and in water and install a fire hydrant safely. You can test it, flush it, what have you. A lot of the hydrants that we have installed don't have that isolation valve. And so what happens is a lot of the times you'll hear, we have discussions all the time about out of service hydrants that have been out of service for 2 years or a year. And those are generally the hydrants that don't have an isolation valve, that their shutdown will affect thousands of people because maybe there's 1,000 feet away is the next valve that we can actually shut down to drain the section of the system to replace or fix that fire hydrant. So it becomes really challenging when you run into a lot of issues on hydrants without guard valves.
If we have that much iron and manganese in our pipes, is that slowly plugging the greater pipe if they open it up and so much comes out of a fire hydrant for this done on a burp test?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, short answer is no. However, the presence of iron and manganese is a continual challenge, particularly in the Jenny Lind water system, Rancho Calaveras, and in Copperopolis, just because it's really hard to filter out. So we have mixed media filters at the water treatment plants that basically we're accelerating the natural process, right? So you have gravel, big rock at the bottom of the filter, and all the way up to anthracite, coal, and fine sand. Well, the manganese is microscopic, so it's going to find itself after it's filtered through the process. It doesn't get extruded through the filtration process. And what happens is all those manganese molecules make friends out in the system. Now, what's going to cause that corrosion and that buildup is corrosion. So that's called tuberculation. So if you have a steel pipe and you connect it to a piece of brass, or you have some sort of galvanic corrosion where dissimilar metals are going to be connected, that's where you have to worry about that kind of corrosion. So you could have ductile iron with a steel nipple coming off of it to a 2-inch line, and the next thing you know, you were going to get tuberculation and you're going to lose the capacity of that pipe. So that's actually kind of we're talking about fire hydrant O&M in this presentation, but you're touching upon capacity, flow rate, and volume is also another critically important aspect. I think I talked a little bit about PPCs or ISOs in this presentation, and that kind of touches upon that aspect of the water system. Here's some more images of cleaning out a fire hydrant and basically taking all the internal components out and then flush it, and then you put brand new internal components in. So luckily they have rebuild kits for fire hydrants. You can replace the bushings and the valves and gaskets, O-rings and whatnot, and put it back in service. Here's an image of manganese flushing. So like I said, continual effort. I think long-term consideration, this being the engineering committee, and Kevin and I have talked about this, is engineering the exclusion of manganese through a different process potentially in the future for the Jenny Lind and Copper Cove water systems.
Wouldn't you say that, one of the most unfortunate circumstances of this manganese accumulation is customer calls?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in the erosion in the confidence of the water supply. So that's also a big challenge that that's why it's so important that we work together on flushing and work together on when there's issues, when you have to flow a line. The chiefs are great about calling us like, hey, we've got an issue. We got a fire. We're rolling over here. We all talk. And then we all can, go back and forth and say, okay, hey, everybody, let's go out and knock on all these doors just to let everybody know there's going to be an issue here because there's an emergency. Folks get it, but at the same time, the condition of the water, as you can see, kind of like the before and after of flushing, really does have an effect on the public's perception of the water system and the water supply. So yeah, here we go. That's hydrant O&M. So we work together for those with the fire chiefs here and their teams, and I'm grateful for you guys to show up. Thank you all very much to ensure that the system's integrity is intact. But the ISO rating is another equally important aspect of our relationship. And so this is basically an assessment of basically the fire department's ability to respond to an issue and to address an issue. So it's also called a public protection classification, and there's a ranking associated with ISO, and this has a direct correlation to folks' insurance rates in their systems or in our systems. And it can be updated every 4 to 5 years. And the water system, the water component accounts for 40% of that ISO ranking or rating. So it's really an important component.
What is our ISO rating? I imagine
Well,
it can't
so
be very-
across the departments, I believe
3. Okay.
2, 4. So copper is the 4. We want to get the lower the better. So it's like 1 to 10, I believe. Yeah, 1 is like, yeah. Do they give out? Yeah. Gotcha.
I would think so in this county with the open space.
So Chief Herzog and Copper and I, we have discussed fire flow testing, and I think we've all talked about it, but fire flow testing is a considerable component of the water side. So being able to actually physically touch and flow and test a hydrant's operation is a critical component of all of this. So here you go. Here's a breakdown of ISO. 40% of the score, the system supply accounts for 30 credits, and hydrants are 3 credits. Inspection and flow testing is 7 credits. So you can see there's an ability to improve that through working together, flow testing some of these hydrants. And it also helps us understand where the pinch points might be. And we might have thought, because you can flow test one and it accounts for 5 other hydrants, I believe. So you can mathematically calculate the flow rates of those others. But what flow testing does is it allows you to system correct or actually corroborate information that you might think it's either fact checking or it's changing the story, and then you have to adjust based on that. So the engineering team, that's when you guys come in, and we work together with ops and engineering to create projects that improve the system. And so here's basically a list of what our folks went through recently over in the Rancho area to do some flow testing relative to the Jenny Lind fire system. And then the recommendations. There's the NFPA puts out a lot of great books on hydrant O&M, maintenance, flow testing, marking of hydrants. It's all really helpful to the fire folks and the water folks. And so kind of why does all that matter? Well, last June, we had a fire in Copper that burned right down the main street. And I know all these folks in here were just grinding for days. And we had 15 field folks out on that fire. And a lot of our distribution, the whole distribution crew of Copperopolis was working basically hand in hand with the fire folks in the field to facilitate their ability to get water. Copper has challenges, like we talked about. So part of the ISO rate ranking is determining flow rate and capacity in certain areas. And our Copper system has some pinch points. So if you're going to draw from one tank, you might deplete it at a rate that's faster than our ability to replenish it. And so what we have to do is we have to monitor that information and then ask the fire folks in an emergency, hey, we're going to put a bag on that hydrant. Can you go,
What's your priority?
500 feet down the road to this new fire hydrant and pull from there? And so we talk about that in the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, and then we confirm it with our folks out in the field and convey it to the folks out in the field that are fighting the fire. Because sometimes that information isn't conveyed quickly enough. And the look on their faces, out in the field when they're like, hey, can you hold off on that one? Like, what? What are you talking about? Well, if the tank runs out, then we won't have any water. So give us about 4 hours to replenish that one, and then we'll get you back to it. And so that's kind of part of the message. But the Arrow fire, it was definitely, pull up your bootstraps and get to work kind of an event. And it was just as intense as I was involved in the Butte fire, and it was just as hairy for me as that. But so that's our Copper tank. So luckily the engineering team in the past had the foresight to apply for funding to replace our Redwood tanks, the system with steel fire resistant material, it's called. Because there's a very real possibility that tank would have been gone if it were Redwood, just like the 602 tank in Rancho Calaveras in circa 2005. We had staff coming up, I think it was the Roosevelt fire. I can't remember the name of that fire, but we had distribution staff pull up on site as the timbers of the roof were falling into the tank. Was half full of water, and the roof was gone. So. Luckily, during this incident also, the residents were evacuated. And that really, I feel like, gave us a lot of, gave us the ability to really kind of keep the integrity of the distribution system intact. Because as soon as folks started coming home, we started seeing spot fires and issues crop up. And another thing that was really helpful for the water system during this incident is that we didn't have a lot of folks that put a sprinkler on the roof and left. because that is one of the considerations that, you know, we all talk about through this responsibility and liability associated with folks that are trying to save their property, but it might undermine the fire folks' ability to use the water in the system to save all of the properties. If you have every single house on one street running a sprinkler on the roof, and then a fire department comes up to the hydrant, tries to pull water, and it's diminished, and they think they're going to get 1,000 gallons a minute, and they get 400, that's a problem. Mountain County's Water Resources Association recently had a workshop. They brought folks in, all these players in Tuolumne County, fire folks, water folks, county administrators, and they talked about these challenges and these issues. And this is one of them that I think we all still need to really work hard to address. And I think it's through public outreach, you know, one sheets, cut sheets, flyers, do's and don'ts. I think it's a cultural thing. And I think we need to obviously be intelligent at how we give that message out. But at the same time, it is our fire folks. You know, they're the ones that are responsible and are responding to the fire. We need to allow them to have as much water as possible to protect our infrastructure. And that includes people's homes. So this is just a picture of one of our hydrants being used during that fire. And then you can see that from the mud puddle in front of this hydrant that this one was heavily used. This was on Main Street in Copper, and it's just getting hammered to great effect. I mean, it's, you know, that's what they're there for. Some images of the fire. And you know, this relationship is continual, it's ongoing, and it's ever evolving. You know, we are here in California, we're in fire country, and so that's our duty to our folks to make sure that we have a strong relationship. So where are we now? Apologies for the white text, but we've replaced 18 hydrants since January of 24, 6 in the Rancho area. Currently, Copper has 1 out of service. Jenny has 1 out of service. The Pass has 7. And we're working to schedule some fire flow tests. And then what's not on this list is we did include 10 additional new hydrants in the capital outlay of this most recently approved budget. So we'll continue the effort of replacing fire hydrants throughout all systems and working to eliminate all those out of service hydrants. And working with the fire folks. And moreover, you know, the county is working on its wildfire prevention plan. And the district is really focused on being involved in that, as obviously all the fire folks are. We want to just be able to be there and provide some input where necessary. So that's it.
Do all these hydrants have breakaway bolts? You know,
Good question. Yeah. Pretty much all of them. I think there's some old ones out there, but probably not as like maybe 5%, less than 5%. Yeah.
I know a few of these guys in the audience, but I'd like for them to stand up and introduce themselves to for the purpose of our.
Come on up to the podium.
Come on up. Yeah.
Mike Johnson, Ebbets Pass Fire District.
Richard Dickinson, Calaveras Consolidated Fire.
Scott Herzog, Copperopolis Fire.
Hi, Scott.
Mine will take the longest. I'm John Parks, Deputy Chief of Altaville Fire, the Fire Marshal, Deputy Chief of Copper, Vice President of the Board of Murphy's Fire District, and your Brett Hart Fire Technology Teacher.
What do you do in your spare time?
Test fire hydrants.
So the 7 hydrants that are out of service in Ebbets, is that partially because they don't have the isolation valves, or?
Yeah, it could be isolation valves. They could be hard to open, so they just need to be replaced. There could be corrosion there. Any number of things. I'm not sure the specifics for each one of those hydrants. Yeah, but it's generally there's going to be something associated with no isolation valve, broken operating nut, broken stem, hard to open, hard to turn. One of those things.
That just seems like a large number in a small area, but a big problem.
Yeah, it's definitely a number we want to we want to reduce, but single digit out of service fire hydrants in our largest service area is not too shabby.
How many hydrants in that service area?
Ooh, that's a great question. I want to say, is it over 400?
It's, we inspected 847 since January, and we're about 30 short of getting the mark. So you're between 900 and 1,000 hydrants in our district with CCW.
Yeah.
And what's the cost per hydrant to purchase one?
Well, it can be anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000.
Okay. I'll bore you with an old war story. About 40 years ago plus, I had a small job up in the city of Oroville, and we were wrapping up this job about 4:30 in the afternoon, and my forklift driver was driving backwards down the sidewalk, and he blew right over a fire hydrant. And I suspect that the people that were in charge of repairing that thing have a policy that, here we go, here's for our picnic fund, because 6 trucks rolled up, 12 people. And they gave my insurance company a choking bill for that. And I just suspected that they just, they look for an out of town contractor and they say, aha, here's our opportunity. So write it down.
Hey, I will. Back to the pass as well. Those 7 out of service hydrants. When we're in snow country in the pass, plows can wreak havoc on your fire hydrants. And so I would imagine that there's quite a few of those are actually out of service because they were broken off and just haven't been repaired or replaced yet. Oh, yeah, 2 were recently hit by cars.
Okay, well,
If I could ask a quick question, just for the chiefs, because this program works great for us. We really appreciate the collaboration and the help that you guys are able to provide the district. How does it, do you have any feedback for us on how it's working? Thank you.
So, one of my concerns is I came from the Bay Area and I worked there for 32 years in Fremont. And so with our ACWD, with the fire department, we want to be able to flush the hydrants. And the reason we flush them, because all that sediment that you showed on there back then, I think apparatus was probably 250,000. Now they're close to $1 million. All that sediment's going in the fire pump. And number 2, I like to work you call it the stem or the yoke, but if we don't operate, we have about 682 hydrants, and then we have PUD, which is Valley Springs, but the hydrants don't get used a lot, but when you need them, it's a lot of work, to open up that dry barrel stem, grease them, and then actually flow the water out of to get that sediment out of there so it's not going into my pump and the fire engine. That's something that we struggle with because it's an aging system down there, but it's a big concern of mine. The other one I would love, it's for the firefighters, as we talk about, whether you're in a commercial area or in a residential area. Where I came from, we had the red cap, we had the green cap, and we had the blue cap. The red cap told the firefighter that's 500 GPM below. The yellow cap was 1,000 GPM. The green, let's just go blue. The green could be 1,000 or could be, a yellow, but like full yellow hydrant. But the blue was a high pressure hydrant, and those obviously we're not going to have any here. But with all of our hydrant system, with the hills, we got the low area, we got the higher, we got the tanks. We just try to educate our people. So very complicated system. Most don't know. They just think it's a dumb hydrant out there that a dog goes to the bathroom on, but it is our lifeline, and it provides a lot of protection for us. And running through our engine, that's my big struggle. We'll work on them. And when a hydrant's out of service for a long time, you might think that's just one. Trust me, I find out very fast when a hydrant's out of service, and then I'll reach out to Damon, and we got to explain to the homeowner why the hydrant's out of service, even though there might be another one right down the road. That homeowner is very concerned. Regarding insurance, yes, they want to know how far the hydrant is from the home, and they want to know how far the fire station's away. So there's a lot of areas, even though I live in Locketon and have my insurance canceled after the Butte fire because it's all changed into tiers with the ISO rating. Yes, it's very important to hydrant. And they want to know the hydrants are serviced, that they're taken care of with the insurance company, because it might help you with your price a little bit. It doesn't mean you're not going to get canceled or not in a wildfire, but it might help you with your price. Thank you for your time.
Well, Is there anything you think CCWD could do in a cost-effective way to improve our ISO rating?
Well, with your system right now, we're good. But I would definitely want to go out and test the hydrants. The flow test should happen. You should have records showing flow tests. And if and when a community burns down, or you're in a commercial area, they're going to see those, insurance companies are going to see those records, and they could hold you liable. Might be wrong, but if we don't have the flow test and no water's coming out, or, wet stuff on the red stuff, it could be an issue for you if an insurance company wanted to come after you. Yeah.
And are you saying that like a burp test that they,
Well, let me go to LA City, the Palisades fire. What was the biggest comment you heard there? We had no water pressure. We had no water pressure. If you don't think that's going to come back to the water board, I got another thing coming for you. They're going to come for you and they're going to find out, why didn't water come out of the hydrant? Does that make sense?
no,
I don't think we'll have that problem here because we got great,
Yeah.
but it's a huge concern.
Yeah, I want to add to, so based on LA, the Association of California Water Agencies is working with there's a working group of, operations-based water folks to develop kind of a baseline set of, objectives that regulatory bodies can understand that a water system is going to work through in an emergency like that. And, one of the things that, is coming to light from LA is that it's kind of like this talk we've had in the past of, hey, it's not about fighting one fire in one system. It's about fighting two fires at the same time in two different systems in Calaveras County. That's what we need to be planning for. But in consideration of LA, and to your point, Chief, is we need to think about also educating folks on a fire hydrant in a neighborhood, or a fire in a neighborhood where you have 5 fire hydrants open at the same time. And you have everybody trying to run water. And that is a whole other beast. And that's a lot of what the complaint was. There was no water to fight the fire, no pressure, because the system is basically open, wide open.
And we have enough to fight the Arrow fire?
We did. But those firefighters,
We also have water tenders. So our water tenders are 2,000 GPM. And if we end up running with a problem, people ask, well, why am I bringing a water tender when I have a hydrant system? It's because of that problem. If there is a problem with the hydrant, we got a water tender.
sure.
Okay, earlier you mentioned that we were doing the burp tests on the hydrant, which allows fast flow, but for a very short period of time. But you mentioned we need to do flow rates. Are we doing flow rates with a burp test?
Those are totally different things.
Yeah.
We are doing flow tests, but we have 6 systems. So last year, for example, we did 11 fire flow tests in Chief Dickinson's district with Fire Marshal Hamry. What we need to do is we need to go to each system and fire flow test a certain amount of hydrants, which, like I said, one flow test accounts for a mathematical calc for those 5 hydrants next to it. Now, when you do a flow test, you're using considerable CCWD resources. So the challenge is how do we respond to all of the work that our team has and coordinate with the fire folks to get it done without leaving something hanging. That's really been the challenge, because we run lean. Everybody's running lean. Yeah.
Just wanted to reiterate that we have a great relationship with CCWD. The program, I believe, is very successful within our district and the other districts. And then just to nail one more time home on the flow testing. So for us in our prevention world, our pre-fire plans, we have software that says when we pull up to XYZ building, it's so many square feet, which requires so many gallons per minute based on 25%, 50% involvement. Right now, we have all your hydrants in our data bank, but everything's $4.99 or less because we don't know the true flow. So when I pull up to IGA on fire, I know I need so many gallons per minute. I have 3 hydrants in that area, but I'm assuming they're $4.99 or less. So I'm gonna have to start looking for more water tenders, additional engines, more relay pumping. So having that fire flow calculation on that hydrant takes the workload and potentially more equipment having to come down that's not needed to really add to that pre-fire plan for us, if that makes sense.
When you say having the information on that meter, I mean, in a book on the meter?
So when we do the flow test,
Mhm.
whoever does it, we get the calculation, CCW retain that information, us as well. Our particular agency, we have it in a software database that when the call comes in, it pre-populates. It tells me my 3 closest hydrants, the gallons per minute coming out of there. And I know that, hey, this building, we can stand alone with those hydrants. Now, we'll still have additional resources coming as some systems fail or could potentially fail. But we know going in there that I have this amount of water coming out. And that can be done annually, biannually, at quarter, or as we need, but right now we assume everything's 499 or less because we're not able to flow test to get an accurate read.
I think one of the challenges there, I think this is a really good point, and I think, we should try to do, increase the amount of flow testing we do. But I think we've talked about this before, Dave, and one of the challenges there is replicating the conditions of an actual fire when you do the flow test, because we may do a flow test when everything else is calm and normal.
Yeah.
And, we can produce 1,000 gallons a minute at that hydrant. But if there's actually a fire that affects more than just that structure, and everybody's got their sprinklers on and their irrigation systems on and there's 3 other hydrants that are working in the system, we may not be able to meet that. And so I wouldn't want us to over promise based on
Absolutely.
flow tests.
And we-
I don't know how we factor that in.
You wouldn't necessarily need to factor in the fact or the knowledge that that hydrant exists. We know if there's multiple incidents because we're responding to them. And so we know it's not an absolute,
Yeah.
but if that's the only thing going on, we could assume that's what we'd be getting
Yeah.
out of there. Another aero fire, no system's designed for multiple vegetation fires or structure fires. You're just trying to keep up as best you can.
Mhm.
But at least that solid upfront number, we can make good sound decisions on a singular event that we have that guaranteed water coming. Multiple events, absolutely, it's out the window. We completely understand that.
That makes a lot of sense.
I'm gonna dumb it down a little bit. On a veg fire, obviously we have water tents, we have aircraft. My concern, like down in my area, is that the strip mall, we have our medical facilities down there. On a strip mall, if I got multiple units that are burning in there, what is that hydrant really giving me, right? One hydrant, and if it's only 500 GPM, I'm out of luck, right? So it just gives, as he said, on the pre-fire plan, apartment complex, I got 3-story apartments, 2-story apartments, commercial building, strip mall, grocery store. What is that going to give me fire flow? And if I already know that, I can have a plan kind of put together of where I'm going to spot my rigs and what we're going to do. Multiple houses burning? Yeah, we get that. Yeah, we're going to catch it about 2 miles down the road and hopefully aircraft stop it.
Right. What's the name of that software that you get?
Flow MSP.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Input.
I have a question about Valley Springs PUD. We've got an unusual situation down there in that CCWD has a,
Is there anybody here from Valley Springs? PUD?
no,
Their district engineers online.
Probably
But-
better for
but
him to
don't-
talk about it.
but wouldn't your facilities would be called into action if you had a fire in Valley Springs? Is that correct? You're-
Yes,
Yeah,
we're
okay,
Calaveras Consolidated, so we cover 168 square miles.
okay.
But understand with CCWD, you have strip malls, you have doctor offices, you have medical complexes. It's not all residential. You got some big areas, and what's coming down the road here that I can't talk about because it's in the planning. There's a lot more coming.
Well, but the point that I want to make is that there is a valve over there. It's like a good neighbor valve that we can supply water to Valley Springs PUD if necessary. And I would assume that if there was a fire in Valley Springs that required a bunch of your rolling stock over there pumping water out of there, it's going to bleed their pressure down. So I'm wondering if we have a protocol that would automatically go over and open that valve if there was a fire.
Yeah, there's not an SOP. There's a relationship between Valley Springs PUD and CCWD related to that intertie. Yeah,
Okay.
and so when either of us have an issue, we can call and we can open that, and it gets tested annually. And to your point, I think, when you're speaking of volume, I just want to kind of highlight one thing also is, we're talking about flow testing, we're talking about capacity. Excuse me. I think one of the other things that's really important to address and to think about moving into the future is a continual conversation. And I think we talk on phone, but perhaps, it'd be beneficial for all of us to get together every quarter, every 6 months, all in this room to talk about all these challenges and what if scenarios. Bring in county EOC. We talked about tabletop exercises, because I think planning and recognizing that the plan is going to kind of go out the window, although you will still be well informed, is really important. And I think the more we do that, the better we are going to be able to address future incidents as they come through.
Yeah, thanks once again, Mike Johnson, Evans Pass Fire District. So I don't think anything I wanted to share with you is any different from what you've already heard. I want to reiterate, the sentiment of what the program that you've put together here to work with the fire districts is a really, really good one. I think working with Damon and the rest of your staff is outstanding, always professional, very quick to respond, lots of good communication, lots of good collaboration, and recap that ISO rating at 40% of those what we base our performance off of is the water system. And when you have a water district like yours that provides 100% of that 40%, makes it a lot easier to get to those high 90% that we need to get those higher ratings. So you own 40% of our performance rating, even though we show it to everybody and go, look, it's as much yours nearly as what you'd say the fire department's performance is. So great work on that. I believe the years of this program building up to what we saw in Southern California, I can't attest to what I see or hear on the news all the time about the water, where it was, how much was not there, other than when those things started to happen, our office started to get blasted with phone calls, right? And it was a relief when they said, hey, do you guys check the hydrants? And we explained the relationship with CCWD. Blue Lake Springs Water does their own. Regardless, we're happy to answer the questions. We ask their location. Oh, that's in our area of CCWD. Yes, we do. When was it last checked? Because I'm seeing that it wasn't done somewhere else in the state, right? And we're like, oh, well, we can tell you. Not only that, we have this program. We had people even, I'm kind of embarrassed to even say, right? But we had homeowners try to pull caps off. One of them managed to, and there was no water behind it. And then they launched a complaint that there's no water. And we said, hey, that's a dangerous, number one. Number two, it's a dry barrel. So proud to have had this program in place. And especially when I'm a fire chief and these folks behind me are too, fire chiefs are losing their job over some of these things in other areas. And we're proud to say, no, we're on it. And it's because of this program that says, hey, we're able to do those things. I think we could do a better job of educating the public of this partnership. Also explaining some of the real clear facts too, that even an ISO class 1, for example, which none of us are but aspire to be, when you're talking about a situation that happened in Southern California, again, I can't say it enough. When you bring 5,000 fire engines in and hook up to 5,000 hydrants, that's not what our system is capable of supporting anywhere that I'm aware of. It's really there for structure fire, supporting the suppression of that, the fire flow for those types of things. But unprecedented wildfire decimates, square miles of everything when you bring in those types of resources. So just as far as our partnership and educating the public, I think they need to be reminded of that too. Everything has its maximum capacity.
Yeah, Chief Johnson make a really good point, and we've talked a lot about, and Damon mentioned the advocacy effort, but there are separate discussions that water agencies are having about just how to frame that message. Because on one hand, we do want to provide people reassurance that we're on it, but we're on it to the extent we can be. And there are a lot of limitations just from the way systems are designed to begin with and what we're capable of. And so again, just not wanting to over promise and create expectations that a fire like that we'd be able to handle it, no problem here, when really no. These systems are not designed for problems like that.
And never were.
And
right. Probably never will be, right?
Right.
So it's good to know that information.
So just trying to figure out how we provide, answers to questions that I think do provide some reassurance for folks, but without, you know, I don't know, ignoring the reality of it too.
I think some good public outreach and public education and the unified message with water and fire and all other entities that have a stakeholdership in that could have some value, but those are some
Yeah.
future steps in my mind. Thank you for your time.
Well, I just want to add, we're working on our public outreach as well. So anything you can say about the good cooperation with CCWD will help us because
Sure.
everyone thinks their rates are way too high, but it's
Yeah.
buying some good stuff.
And I go to other parts of rural California and various areas that are similar to ours. This is really a gold standard of a water system. And I know that comes at a cost, right? And we know that from the fire service too. So sometimes when you go to a place where there's a small water agency or something like that costs very little, but then again is not nearly as robust, some of them don't even have hydrants, right? So we're very fortunate, speaking from our district, for what you guys provide for us. So thank you.
Can we quote you on that?
We're already putting it on right now. It's gonna be on Facebook.
Well, again, I'm John Parks. My main job for being here today is I'm the new fire marshal for Copperopolis. And I'm going to tell you first thing off is that I retired from the city of Palo Alto in 21. I became this county fire marshal for a year. I'm a deputy chief and a fire marshal. Everybody in your organization are a class act. And this is coming from a former fire marshal from the city of Palo Alto. I have worked with these gentlemen in the county level. And anytime I call, text, ask them questions, they are right there. Your operations are amazing. I just got to say, it is a level 1 class act there. My background in that is that I was in charge of the entire water system for the city of Palo Alto. 2008, we had an ISO 3. We decided to redo the entire water system in the city, including Stanford University and the Stanford Shopping Center, which had the old Transite ACP pipe. And then we rolled into some ductile and C900, but we changed it all to the HDPE. And we went from, in 2008, took us to 2014, we went to an ISO 1. Very hard to do, but there are a couple of things I wanted to just give you some nuggets you can do in our county here for yours. Is number one is that if we can have the planning of your piping systems in the engines on the pre-fire plans, like the isometrics of it and what size pipes that we have. So when you have your main line coming in and you're branching off or going into loops, the size of that pipe determines how much flow you're going to get in your friction loss. As a fire marshal, I determine those friction losses about what those hydrants can handle based on a mathematic theory. With that, it also gives you hydrant locations and things like that. Now, just know that I've worked on a ladder truck for many years, so we float a lot of big water out of hydrants down in that city. But we also have a safeguard. It's a 20 PSI residual. So if we running 5 fire hydrants from any one of these engines or multiple engines, when we hit 20 pounds of pressure residual, we don't go any lower than that. Or it's our safeguard that we'll go to the incident commander and say, hey, we're at 20 PSI. We've got 5 engines flowing. What do you think? Okay, keep flowing. We're going to put one more on. We're going to see where it goes. If it goes down to 15, we're still safe because it's got pressure coming in, but we're probably not going to go any lower than that. So just know that we do have safeguards on our end, but having that isometrics in those plans that are available on the CAD system inside the fire engine would be extremely helpful. And when they do their evaluation and their audit for ISO, when they come in and they see that we have these, it makes a huge difference to them. So those are the things we can do. I know you don't have a cross-contamination policy in the county. I know it's exorbitant cost to do that with backflow checks into houses and businesses and everything. But maybe someday down the road, it could be looked at to. Oh, you did? Okay, when we talked about it, we talked, yeah, so we had one. So basically, any water that flows into a structure or a commercial building doesn't get the water that is being disturbed from your fire hydrant pipes. It actually checks it and keeps the water from going only one way. So you don't get the contaminants and anything else going in. So if you have clear hydrants, it helps. anyway, these, I can't even say enough about what I've experienced up here in this county, and I live in Murphy's, about the quality of people you have working on this.
We kind of like them too.
Yeah.
But let me ask this, you're saying you don't have full piping plans? We would have them and we could work together to give them to.
Well, yeah, we have to remember you have a history you go back to as far as when they were even starting to be kept track of. I know, like, you know, it just depends on how well things were tracked before these gentlemen got here or anybody was here. And now with the updated, you know, changing from one application to another or software, do you lose it? I'm saying if we do have those through your operations or planning department, to have those like for the city or for the town of Copperopolis or Altaville or Calco or even Ebbets, they're crucial for your fire protection engineer that's working in there. And then I've actually floated a couple hydrants for you as well, just pro bono, just because I know how to do them. But when you get the request form, they're typically putting sprinklers in, or there's some reason why they want to do that. But you don't necessarily need to flow every hydrant, maybe just a burp test on them. But if they're all in a loop and you've got 10 on the loop and you have your isometrics, you know where that water's going, you could test too. And now with today's technology, with the Aquilon testing valve, you can use one person to test one hydrant. It's not the old school, two people at the end of the loop, one holding a pedo and the other letting it go, and you're wasting, 500,000 gallons of water. You can do it very, very quickly and efficiently. I think we looked at the Aquilon system, which I ended up using in Palo Alto. Saves a lot of water, is very efficient. And so there's all those things that when they come do their audit, they will look at whether you have this equipment, they'll look at your isometrics, they'll talk to your fire marshal. And I made myself available to all 9 fire districts with my experience in fire prevention and water systems. So they know that they can call me if they have any questions. But class act.
One thing to add to that too. So we do have a GIS system that depicts all of the water conveyance that we have, although it's not 100% accurate. And it doesn't necessarily have all the pipe diameter or the metadata that they're going to need to fight the fire. That doesn't mean that we can't share that in an emergency. And we've had fits and starts of a conversation, either with as an individual conversation or as a group about how do we share that? How do we convey that information? Do we work on it ahead of time so that everybody can see it and it's there? Or do we have like a password that you can have in an emergency at the emergency operations center that we share and then you can use? But one thing that we got to be mindful of is sometimes the information could be inaccurate. And so we got to kind of have some caveats in there as well as we work to upgrade all of the information in the GIS system so that ultimately it gets to that point where it's like spot on. It's accurate. It's nuts. It has everything you need. Not completely there yet.
Okay, any other comments? How about any questions or comments from anybody online? Okay, well, that concludes this discussion, and thanks again, you guys. I'm
Yeah, thank you.
very pleased to see you here
Appreciate it.
today.
Thank you, guys. John, thanks. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
Yes, and,
Oh, yeah. All right, let's move on to 4B. We have somebody here named Alec Brown. Or Alex?
So we did a brief introduction in one of the board meetings, but I kind of want to introduce Alex more. We've had kind of some retirements and some people move on. So we've had a couple of vacancies in the engineering department for quite a while now. And so we're lucky to have Alex, and hopefully we'll get another vacancy filled here soon. But so Alex is our new senior engineer. He's a licensed professional engineer. He has 20 years experience in geotechnical engineering and working for municipal water and wastewater infrastructure. He's worked for the South River Water and Power Agency, the city of Oroville, and most recently PG&E. notably, Alex has also been, was in the construction management team for the Oroville Dam reconstruction after the issues they had there. He brings a lot of knowledge in permitting with the FERC, DSOD, Army Corps of Engineers, who were all really involved with a lot of our capital improvement projects and relicensing efforts. He has a master's degree in engineering and he lives here locally in Forest Meadows. So if you want to say anything, Alex, but we're really lucky to have him on board.
Thanks. Thanks to the directors, Mike, hiring me. It's great to be here. This is a great team of people. I've worked with a lot of different people throughout my career, consultants, feds, state, local people, and this is a really great team of people. It's a great engineering team. It's a great engineering group, and everybody works together and it seems like it's great to be here.
What did you specialize in your master's degree?
I did geologic engineering and geotechnical engineering, and I also did geotechnical earthquake engineering and some geophysics. I studied the Oroville Dam, seismic response. I've studied sedimentation of dams, and then I studied there was an earthquake in New Zealand in 2011 at Christchurch, and so there was an earthquake right before that, and I studied the differences between the two. So then in my undergrad, I did water resources as an emphasis. So hydrology, hydraulics, water quality. It's a really great fit for here. One of my first jobs after school was South Feather Water and Power, and I was in their water district for the first half of my time there. Found leaks and fixed leaks and did inundation maps and GIS systems and water models and a lot of the stuff we're doing here.
So this isn't so much about CCWD, but I did hear a really interesting podcast about our dams and some rains that we get every 100 years or so.
Mhm.
Does this sound familiar to you, that some of our dams are not prepared to handle the kind of water that we could get, like we got in 1862 when Sacramento was 10 feet underwater?
Well, when Sacramento was 10 feet underwater in the Great Inland Sea, there was also the levee system wasn't what it is today too. So you have in engineering hydrology, you have a 10-year storm, 100-year storm, you can have a 2,500-year storm. That's based on probability. It's not a storm that happens every 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's a storm that in any year has a 1 in 100 chance of happening.
Right.
Can our dams handle that? I think most dams can. I think what happened with Oroville had to do with the spillway. The dam was fine. It was separated between the spillway and the dam with a big outcrop of tertiary material, big rock outcrop.
Right.
Most dams are designed to operate far below what they're capable of. I'm not working with the dam safety of our dams, but I've heard nothing but good things. We have a great concrete arch dam. It's curvature, it's the arch is curved, it puts all the forces out into the geology. It's new. It's one of the newest dams I've ever heard of, which is great. So I can't imagine where we'll have those issues. One of the things that's changed, is, especially after Oroville, is FERC and DSOD are looking at 2,500-year storms, which are gigantic. And they have a 1 in 2,500% chance of happening. So it's not really, I don't
even know if you can design for it. It's like designing for a nuclear blast or designing for 12 magnitude earthquake. Doesn't make, from an engineering standpoint, you can design for it, but
Not cost effective.
the facility would be so gigantic. We'd have a lot of water in it.
Understood. Sorry to get off topic, but I just
It's fine.
was fascinated by this and how close Oroville came to really going down too as well.
Well, there's multiple issues at Oroville. The Hyatt power plant was not functioning to its full capacity, and so they couldn't let a lot of the water out. And they didn't want the main spillway to fail, so they let it come up. But then they let it up so much that it went over the emergency spillway, which was a bigger deal, and so then they had to let it out. They could have just let the main fail from the beginning. But they were trying to avoid that, so.
Sounds like a great man to have on the team. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You must have felt like that you were in the spotlight of the world during that event. I mean, it was on every channel. The spillway is going to go. It's going to go.
It was, I was on the construction management team and we had a meeting once a week with Kiewit, who was doing the rebuild. And we had a clock and it counted it down in seconds. The last portion of it was seconds to November 1st at 10 a.m., which is when the last spillway wall had to be in. And we had that clock going everywhere we were at. And there, I have a picture of myself in front of that spillway wall at November 1st, 10 a.m. going in. Yeah, it was intense. It was around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I gained weight. You know, my doctor told me to watch what I was eating. It was intense.
Well, I want to express my appreciation for you being here. How long have you been in the county?
Since February.
Okay.
Yeah.
How come it took so long to get them here? Anyway, welcome aboard. And, thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 4C, we have the La Cantera Master Plan update. Take a break or? Okay, we can keep going. Let's go.
Yeah, so I'm here to talk about the La Cantera Master Plan update and the capacity fee study. So the original La Cantera Master Plan was adopted in 2018. Since then, the district's completed new studies and engineers reports. We advanced the phase 3 wastewater treatment plant design, which is the project we're working on right now that's at 90% design. And since 2018, the county's also updated the general plan. So the population projections have changed. So the updated master plan provides the current flow projections, 150 gallons per equivalent single family unit, which we call the ESFU. The revised capital improvement needs based on the projected growth and the new designs that we have. So then also the master plan looks at the long-term planning to accommodate build out that's identified in the county's general plan. So the phase 3 improvements, which is what we're currently working on, and that's for the plan developments that are in the works right now. And we're at 90% design on those plans. So it adds a second larger biolac basin, which is the activated sludge basin that we have in the treatment plant. There's another one that we'll be constructing on the opposite side of the site. And this will increase the capacity of the plant. Along with that, we'll need new blowers, effluent pumps, and new electrical building. And then also the pipeline at La Cantera, we have an lower storage pond and upper storage pond. The pipe going to the lower pond is not large enough. It's a gravity pipeline. So with the added capacity and new developments, that pipeline is undersized to bring the water to the lower storage pond. And then the future build out for the full build out of the La Cantera service area, we'd have to rebuild the existing biolac basin and a new headworks, because the headworks is where the water first comes into the treatment plant. It's not large enough. Added tertiary filters, which is the filters, sand filters, and a UV disinfection upgrade. Our UV channel, that's the final disinfection, is not large enough. And then we also will have problems with the seasonal storage of effluent in the lower pond. So basically, we use the effluent from the treatment plant at the golf courses during the irrigation season. So you have to have a large enough pond to store that water in during the non-irrigation season when the golf course is not using the water. So we want to consider different ways of reusing that effluent to avoid having to build a larger pond like we're doing at Paparopolis. So yeah, looking at effluent storage and disposal, the current pond is adequate for phase 3. So the current developments we have in the works, that pond's large enough. Under build out, the 100-year rainfall. So if we have the 100-year rain event at full build out, the pond is not large enough. About 51 acre feet, that would need to be. So we need to kind of explore options, that we've been working on with, kind of the grant opportunities that are out there for maybe groundwater recharge, or disposal into some of the waterways eventually. But in the near term, that's not a problem. And then we've been talking to VSPUD about, regional, working with them, collaborating on maybe making a regional treatment plant. There was a 2014 study that looked at sending the water from VSPUD to La Cantena. The regionalization could improve the outcome for both agencies and make the project more competitive for state and local grants. State and local grants, stuff's changed recently with them, but they historically have been looking to fund projects that consolidate two treatment plants together as a regional treatment plant. It wouldn't be a consolidation project. It would be a project where we would take better water and treat it. It wouldn't be any consolidation of the two agencies.
When you say that the rules, I think I heard you say that the rules have recently changed. Has that
Yeah, they're
made-
not looking, historically, they've been looking disadvantaged communities, so VSPUD's service areas that has severely disadvantaged community as opposed to most of our current sewer areas not in La Cantena. So bringing them in could score some points on the grant because they're a disadvantaged community. But some of the grants have gone away from disadvantaged community and more to, so there's stuff's changed recently, so we don't know how good of an opportunity it is, but it's worth exploring.
You said there's a lot of development that's going on.
Yeah.
And explain to me about the capacity fees. That's
Capacity, yeah, sorry, capacity fees are connection fees, basically. It's our way of saying, so in order to connect to our facilities, they have to pay a fee. So we're looking at doing well, I was gonna get to that, but a capacity fee study. So that would be, so we got LGI Homes that wants to build homes in the La Cantena area. We got Gold Creek that has lots that are built out and the sewer system's already constructed. They just haven't paid their capacity fees. We got the Jenny Lind Elementary School that's going to be tied into our system. We have other developments that are in the works that they've submitted concept review applications to us, that they want us to know if they can connect. So there's if all goes as planned, could be starting construction on the LGI subdivision here very soon.
I guess
so
the question more relates to those capacity fees and the fact that we need to put money into the system to get really larger piping, bigger ponds and other things. In your opinion, are the capacity fees appropriate for the work that needs to be done? In terms
No,
of
well, we're going to do a study to determine that. It's a very complicated study. So it's something that we want to make sure that it's defendable in court.
That's the one that HCR's.
Yeah, ACR provided us a proposal to look at the existing capacity fee. So our projects are a lot more expensive than what our last capacity fee study had for the project cost. So we're assuming that the capacity fees need to be increased to cover the cost of these people to connect to our system. So right now we're nearly at capacity. So we don't have any capacity at these. So these people don't pay, the developers don't pay capacity fees till they're ready to connect, because once they pay capacity fees, they have to start paying water and sewer rates on a bi-monthly basis. So it's kind of works against us in some ways, because some of these developers probably wouldn't pay capacity fees already had they not been required to start paying sewer and water rates right off the bat. So yeah, so we want to look at the capacity fee studies because we have we want to make sure that when these people do come online, that we have the money to build the infrastructure that they need to support them.
So
Kevin, on your first page here that says the average for the equivalent single-family unit is 150 gallons a day, but over in the hydroscience report, it scans from 2018 to 2024, and the average is 131. Why, if the average is 131, we're using 150? Tell me.
So our design standard is 195 is what we've always had in our design standard, but because our actual flows are 131, we assumed it was more responsible to reduce that down to 150 so that we could design it for the actual capacity. So 150 is kind of across the board number that a lot of water agencies use for their average dry weather flows for individually for ESFUs. So up on the pass, we see a lot lower number because on Evans Pass, because there's part-time residents, so their number's even lower up there. But I wouldn't want to do less than 150 for sizing a treatment plant.
But if you go up to 195, it just gets more expensive.
Well,
And we don't need it.
that's why I'm bringing it up. If from the last 20, not 20 years, but for a long time, the average of 131 was just jumped off the page that we're using 150. So I'd kind of be curious about how much the price would go down if we went to 140. Instead of 150.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, we could probably find a way to look into that. I don't know if it's an easy way to do an incremental marginal cost. But I think to Kevin's point, we're trying to strike a balance where we don't need to use 1.5. That would overshoot.
Well, how about the state's continuing pressure to lower and lower and lower the water use numbers? So
Yeah, they're 55 gallons a day per capita. So yeah, that would be 110 if there's two people. If there's an average of three people, you're at the 150 number or above the 150 number. So I think that down in the lock antenna area, I think that the 150, I mean, they have more dense population down there than some of their other areas within our, up in Evans Pass where 70% of the homes are part-time homes. So I think that the 2.5 is, or 3.0 for lock antenna is reasonable at 55 gallons. That gets you right at the number.
Okay, so this chart isn't talking to specific, it's larger than that. So,
No, this is lock antenna. Yeah, all we're showing is just lock antenna.
okay. And that with new development could be a changing demographic, bring up more families moving in, thus more use.
Yeah, and we have there's some of them are townhomes and we count those as 0.75 EDU. So there's some, depending on the type of unit, they might have a reduced factor. They may not be a full single family home.
I was actually suggesting it might be more than the 131.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it could be a changing demographic if you get people that are commuting to the valley as young families and stuff.
Okay, so really all we're asking for at this time is,
Yeah, so kind of what we're asking for is the engineering committee. It doesn't have to go to the full board because it's $21,000. But we're looking for concurrence from the engineering committee that we should move ahead with the capacity fee study, try to get some more funds for these upcoming projects that we desperately need. And then bring the master plan to amendment to the full board. So the master plan that's in here, we wanted to bring that to the full board for formal approval. And then we want kind of some guidance from the engineering committee if we should continue discussions with the Valley Springs PUD and develop a preliminary grant application to the state for a project that could bring in grant funds to fund this project.
And just to follow up on a couple of those items, so with the master plan being updated, we felt like, because we actually seems like it wasn't that long ago. It's been a few years now when we last updated the capacity fee for Valley Springs, but
Like 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years ago. So it's one of our more recent updates. We did copper at the same time. But the capacity fees are largely based on the information we derive from the master plans. And so we've been updating the master plan and a lot of development happening in Alice Springs more than anything else. We thought it was appropriate to also reconsider or revisit the capacity fee to make sure it's where it needs to be. So that's the, I think the recommendation from staff. And then on VSPUD, we've had some really good discussions with them about what makes the most sense down there. And whether we have systems that are side by side that are expensive to operate, and they expressed at least a willingness to engage in these discussions and try to figure out what makes the most sense for them and for us. And so I think it's
They'd be interested in a joint grant application.
it seems like there's definitely a willingness there. We can't speak for them. I think we would probably, if we continue making progress with them, it makes sense maybe at the next engineering committee to agendize this item separately and invite them to participate. And continue to build that relationship and that concept, because it could be really mutually beneficial.
Yeah, that's a prudent thing to do. So you have our blessing. So,
It's not a huge amount of money. Makes perfect sense.
Okay, and we'll bring them master plan to the full board as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I did look at this task description and the total labor and expense cost estimate by HDR. I'm just curious about why or how that one public presentation could be over 10% of the total cost. You see that? It's
Yeah,
2,800.
they'd be traveling here for the board meeting to give a presentation to the full board. So we consider,
Are they flying
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd be flying into town.
on a 747?
Yeah, because I think if it's the same folks we worked with last time, they were based in Seattle. But probably.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and we considered a second, the need for a second meeting, so there could be some.
They don't necessarily have to be here. So we could. We could revisit that in that.
But Sean Corn's going down some pretty good spots.
Yeah, they do really good work, and it's really
Yeah.
important that you have with the already having developments on board, that we have a very well thought out and well done capacity study.
They're doing some good work for us in other areas too, so I'm in favor of that. Okay, is that all you need from us on that item?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's go on to 4D, the Jenny Lind AB water transmission line.
Good afternoon, directors. My name is Juan. I'm an associate engineer in the district. And Stuart.
I do.
Inspector for that project. So. I'll start by giving a quick visual overview of the project. The project includes somewhere around a little over 20,000 feet of linear force main that we're going to be installing. It adds 5 pressure reducing valves and around 210 service line replacements as well. What you see on the screen or in piece of paper in front of you, the red is what we have completed already and entails around 12,500 linear feet of the 14-inch pipe. What you see on the blue is probably 1,000 feet of linear 14-inch, and then the rest is going to be 6,500-ish of the 12-inch force main that we can do. I included a profile view of the project just to give you some background of the elevation changes and the topography of the main project. Is a very challenging
project to go up and down because as you can imagine, the valleys are probably fill material and the ups are probably just hard rock because of the area that we live in. So this ties me to the rock excavation. So I titled the slide rock excavation because it seems to me that in some places we're not doing trench excavation, we're just going through pure rock. So with that said, if you see on your left image, you see a hydraulic hammer. They literally have to chip the rock in pieces in order to remove it. And Jared this afternoon showed me a picture of a solid boulder the size probably twice as this stand of because they have to remove. So when they do that, as you can see in some of the image too, in both left and right, it blows out, it breaks the asphalt and like it's not so they cut it straight, but as they move in the rock, the asphalt is actually deteriorating and breaking on the sides. Do you want to add something to the rock? All right. So due to this rock in the project, it was originally added 30 cubic yards of rock excavation, and after that, a bid item for $50,000 was included. Unfortunately, we have exhausted the 30 cubic yards that we had originally and the $50,000 that we initially anticipated for the project. With this said, we are at 63% of linear pipe install. We are expecting maybe to double the quantity of where we are right now with to be conservative. But we're gonna bring that back to the full board for approval. And just doing a brief overview of the rock issues and really hard rock that we're going through. Now I'm gonna cover a little of the pipe challenges we have had. So the district and DA Woods have gone through multiple sections of pipe and they're discovered somewhere around 33 or 35, I don't remember exact number, damaged pipes. And in the image, you can see some bent spigots and the mortar, which is the protective material inside the pipe, some alligator cracking. Some of the alligator cracking will fill back up with the pressure and then with the once it absorbs a little water. But when it's missing a chunk of it, like on the far right, those defects could potentially lead to leakage down the line. So with that said, we approached American Pipe for replacement, and they suggested that we replace the connection, a different type of pipe with a different connection, because that's what they had in hand. So I believe yesterday or the day before yesterday, we received, well, it had to be yesterday, Monday. We received the first load of the new pipe, and as Jared probably can say something about it, it looks very, very good conditions. So paving and road restoration. So when we doing the trench paving, as the project is progressing, they use a cold mix asphalt, which is softer to some degree, so it deteriorates with time, and then it makes the road bumpy, for lack of a better term. So, but in order to mitigate that, the hot mix asphalt machine can come in later on the project, and we tend to do a couple miles at a time, about a mile at a time. And this picture actually both pictures are of the last plug paving that it was done. And as you can see, it's a really wide trench, and that some of the efforts is because of the blowouts that we have because of the rock.
Let me ask this, from what you know about the geology for the last distance, is it going to be block all the way?
So during the preliminary design of the project, we received the technical information. They did refraction testing and boring, and it's a hit and miss, for lack of a better term, because as Jared might mention something about it as well. And what I said earlier, like on the valleys and on the peaks, if you hit a section where there's not a vein of hard rock, you might be able to like dig through it, which they've been doing that. But there's some places it's very unpredictable. We want to assume there's going to be just as much rocks that we have encountered, but because of the go back to the topographic or the profile. If you see the blue, how is this? Everything is uphill. We could predict that it's going to be harder than usual rock. So, but it's just a assumption. And
I've got a question on,
yes, sir.
on the pictures that show the rock excavation challenges there. It looks like that there has been some like patch paving alongside the larger ditch. Was there piping that had to be removed?
Director, those are plates. So when they do the digging, sometimes they use a steel plate and then use some of the whole asphalt. Is that what you mentioned in like the one that goes to the?
Yeah, on each side of the ditch.
Those are just to make it drivable. So the steel plates are.
They're 12 by 12. But yes, there is a lot of patch paving existing in that road because of our existing water system and the repairs that have taken place in there. That's also something that will end up being addressed when the service lines are replaced. Those will all get plug paved and then the final pave will cover those. To answer your question on rock, I don't anticipate that the rock is going to become any less. We may come across a couple more fill areas where we can get some good footage, but from here on out, we're going up the mountain, and with the outcroppings that you can see that are existing, I don't think you're going to run into any less.
Sorry, the quality of that rock looks like, okay, that stuff that's bad, it's not hard like granite, but
The bluestone that we encounter is hard. That is what we're getting that is unrippable, and we're having to use the hammer. We are now on our second hammer and our sixth bit.
it's just my question.
That trench is just full of stones. I'm just curious, but that all has to come out. Are they hauling it?
Yes, that's all going to Ford Materials there.
Okay. Fortunately, they're pretty close.
So they haul that out, and then we're doing 100% import with Class 2 AV.
So coming back from Ford.
Yep.
They're crushing the rock and sending it back.
Yes, they are.
Fun. And the new pipe is,
It's the same material. It's a different restraint system. We're going to the biter rubbers instead of the blockers, which is a little bit cleaner in my opinion. Less to go wrong. The pipe, they sent me 2 loads yesterday, 940 feet. We inspected it as we unloaded it, and it's pristine. The stuff that was rejected, they tried to do field repairs. The district told them, we're not paying for field repaired pipe, we're paying for new pipe. And they did not argue, they just replaced it.
I saw there before the meeting and I was kind of skeptical about just giving them a blank check, so to speak, for extra rock removal. But he pointed out that it's not a blank check, that he's documenting every minute. Did you bring those?
Yes.
Shorts in? Just pretty.
We're tracking it time and material. But they time and make a determination site. It is a written, so I track. And it's not with the whole quarterly meetings for and
Okay, so what you want from us is
What is time, sufficient times? Okay.
yeah, I think it's just an update.
Just an update.
Yeah.
With,
Just
with,
scary update.
well,
Been a challenge.
I would like to add that we're gonna bring it to the full board, a change order to add more funds for the rock excavation.
Okay, so that's coming.
It's coming, yes. Not at this. time.
There will be no opposition from this group.
Kudos to Jared and Juan and to being just right on top of this project.
Yes.
It could have gone badly and it's, you know, we're gonna get the product that because of these guys being.
One question that I have, they have, the pipe that is in the ground has been tested sequentially and
I'll let Jared.
Yes, with the problems that we had with the pipe, now we're testing it every 1,000 feet. And then to plug pave to get the cutback out of the roadway and somewhat restore the road for the public. We're testing the main as we go. And that's when after it's tested, then they pave it. So we are loading, they should have been loading the next section today. And I'm only 1,000 feet behind as far as testing. Last Wednesday, we plug paved, we did 5,610 feet. Placed about 430 tons. And they did it, we were done by 3:30 in the afternoon.
how do you go about testing it? I mean, it's a hydrostatic.
It's a hydrostatic test. This, because of the pressures down there and the elevation change, this is being tested to 245 PSI for a 2-hour test, and it can't drop more than 3 PSI in that 2-hour test.
And the pipe was exposed during that time so that if there was a leak,
No, it has to be buried in subgrade, up to subgrade.
so you could detect where the leak was occurring.
No, and that was what brought up the material problems that we've had. We've come across some factory defects, pinholes, hairline crack, and then we had a bell that was weeping. So when they have a section that will not pass a test, then they have to go start exposing each joint. So, yeah, it's
So you
very
do that
kind.
before you pay, but after you back,
Yes.
and then this quality control strikes me as before, is this industry kind of, it's actually kind of a standard, comes out like this, you gotta be careful, people like you watching that.
Right now, with what's going on between DA Wood and the district, DA Wood is now, they've upped their quality control immensely. We're now visually inspecting with flashlights each joint as it's stabbed. We count lockers as it's stabbed. We're inspecting it prior to putting it in place and sending it home in the ditch. And we're now inspecting them as they come off the truck, and we reject anything that is not up to par.
Amazing, we tried to have a field repair. Thank you for holding fast on that.
You, Jared, you've been at this a few months
We started in April last year.
and you've been doing this work for how many years?
This is now 26.
Good job. Okay, the next item is 4E, and before we go into 4E, I'd like to break for 5 minutes. All right, let's move on to 4E, the Huckleberry Lift Station CIP.
Good afternoon again, directors. So I'm going to be going over the efforts for the design project for the Huckleberry Lift Station. This image came from our system maps. Is all the green arrows or all the green lines with arrows look like a spaghetti. Well, it's actually our collection system, like Contenta sewers, sewer system. The red star that you see on the bottom of the image, that's our Huckleberry Lift Station. So this whole entire system at one point or the other is going to end up at that lift station. And then from that lift station, it's gonna go through a 12-inch force main into the La Contenta sewer treatment plant. So we team up with Loomis Engineering or Loomis and Associates for the design for the Huckleberry Lift Station. So some of the major improvements that a lift station is going to include, I put it on the red boxes, and I have a series of red boxes coming up so I can talk a little about them. So it's going to include 2 polymer concrete wet wells. It's going to include the 4 submersible pumps, and I'm going to present the asymmetric view of the wet wells and the pumps. It's going to include a transformer. And I may add that a lot of these items are not set in stone yet. We are talking with our electricians in-house and with our ops department at how we're going to place these items. So this is just an overview of it. So it's going to include a new diesel powered generator for backup power. And all the controls necessary for the pumps and then the electrical system. And it's going to include as well a blower for auto control. So it takes, because it's a lift station is in a neighborhood, so we don't want the neighbors to having to smell. So this is an isometric view of the wet wells and the pumps. As you can see, there you got 4 pumps, 2 pumps on each side. They're connected. And this is how it look from the top.
I want to go back to see if my understanding of this whole thing is accurate. Back in the previous discussion with the hydroscience proposal that was being discussed, there was an item, there's a table here of 5.5-1 where it shows about $8 million worth of Huckleberry Lift Station replacement cost estimate. 8 million. So the Lumos proposal is going to not consider this 8 million of replacement cost estimate. And are we talking about 2 different approaches on the Huckleberry Lift Station?
As far as I know,
Yeah, so that estimate is the Huckleberry Lift Station includes contingency, so the project cost, direct cost is $6 million that they have in the for that project, and there's contingency because the construction is still 2 years out and there's still some unknowns. That was at a 50% estimate. So we put the contingency in there. So, but now we're at this $6 to $8 million range. The original estimate came in at 10 million, but we've been working to value engineering it down. So does that answer your question?
Well, why does Hydroscience have an analysis?
No, they got the estimate from Loomis. So the Hydroscience is doing that estimate came from from Loomis, and we gave that to Hydroscience so they could plug that number into the estimate. So they use the number, that plus the contingency to account for that dollar amount.
But on this list that totals 8 million, there's things like mobilization, stormwater, best management practice, groundwater bypass. There's literally no parts
all
and
came-
pieces.
That all came from Loomis.
But I know that there's no parts and pieces for in the pump structures and the concrete work and everything that's in this the Loomis proposal.
Yeah, so yeah, Huckleberry listed HLS. So you got the mobilization. So yeah, the wet well is the concrete. So that's a precast wet well. Wet well assembly, discharge pipes, fittings, that's the $3.2 million. And then they got a $977,000 contingency. So $6 million in today's dollars of what it costs. And then they put a contingency factor in there to get to the $8 million that it could cost, because there's some unknowns, because it was, and this is at 60% design, now we're at 90%, so they refined the cost, but they put a $1.6 million contingency in there because this thing may not be built for some time.
Okay, well, I just, it was not clear the way that this was presented that the discussion under the Lumos proposal is the same as is contained in this five.
Yeah, Hydroscience happens to be designing the lock antenna phase 3 improvements, so they put their costs in here, and then we requested a cost from Loomis to put into here, and then we put an escalator on it for the time. So that $6,168,000 came from Loomis and Associates.
Okay. Very good. Sorry for the interruption here, John.
No, that's good. I learned something. So during the design process, working with Loomis and Associates, we did a test, a force main flow and pump station test of the existing equipment. So we met with the operations teams, and we actually shut off the pumps and let it build up at the lift station, the level. So then we start firing pumps one at a time, and just so we can see the pressure built up on the 12-inch force main and the pressure that the existing pressure that the pumps can create. Would that tell us, or what we're looking for is that because we were going to put a new lift station there, we want to make sure that the force main that is existing right now can handle the flows and the pressure from the new pump system coming in. With that said, there was a surge analysis was created. So as you can imagine, Valley Springs, there are a lot of up and downs with the force main. Well, every time you go up in the hills, they added air relief valves and vacuum breakers. So what that does is, if you picture, you have on the top of the hill, the concave, if a breakage would have happened below that, if you don't have a way to stop the flow, you could essentially create a siphon and bring all the sewer from the 12,500 feet of 12-inch pipe into one location. That can be pretty bad. So what was designed back then, it was check valves, and there were also air relief valves. So you want to have the air relief valves because air goes to the top at all times. So if you put air in a steel container, like a bubble, a construction bubble, the bubble is always going to be up. So what happens on those force mains, if some of the air gets into the system, it can actually create cavitation on pumps, and it could actually create higher normal pressures on the system. So what is done is we add these air relief valves at the top of the curves, so it releases the air. Well, what that does as well is if there's a breakage, the air release valve in the vacuum breaker could break the vacuum and you have all the fluid. So the check valves were added back then. But on the recent search analysis that Loomis Associates completed, they discovered that we need to add a couple small pieces, check valves, pretty much across the system. It's not a done deal yet. We're just starting to talk about it, and we're going to talk to operation team about it, so everybody's on the same page. And some of these efforts, for example, the 12-inch force main, it was completed because for the same reasons that if we put a new lift station, we want to make sure the rest of the system can handle it. That concludes my design presentation.
Simple question, just from my curiosity. When you say a polymer concrete wet weld, that's a polymer additive to the concrete that makes it even stronger, more waterproof?
Yes, that's my understanding. Waterproofness more than anything. And in addition, I believe there's coatings that you can add to the concrete in this exterior to make it less impermeable.
Will you be giving this report to the board?
No, director. This is we're 90% design. And once we maybe conclude close to the 100, we will bring it back to the board. Not for the 90.
I was just wondering about the spelling of any improvements.
We probably will.
Bring
Bring it to the full board.
Yeah.
Or probably it's contract award if we get, when we get to that. Free.
Proofread.
That's it.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the 4F, notice of intent. That is wildfire hardening and critical pump stations.
See you again, Paul. This is the notice of intent for wildfire hardening of critical pumps. And we're the notice of intent for a hazard mitigation grant. It's a little bit longer report, so I'll probably just go through and skim highlight. Sure. It's all right. So the notice of intent's been filed with the California Office of Emergency Services. The grant would fund the project to harden critical pump stations, which, that's for fire water and that's for drinking water. And so these facilities, if we lost them during a wildfire, they'd be a significant loss. And we want to protect them structurally as well as make them more hydraulically sound and have SCADA and other things that would help us monitor them and keep them hardened. The loss of these pumps would be a threat to domestic water and fire suppression. And the grants for higher, it's for fire. So we're in an area of historic destructive fires. California in general, but like Calaveras County is a lot like Butte County, where I'm from, where you've got rugged topography and you've got an area that's prone to fire. Hardening these pumps then helps us fight those fires. Inside your packet of this PowerPoint, you'll see where the project area is. It starts up at Sheep's Ranch, and then it comes down Sheep's Ranch Road to there's a timber tank on the top of Sheep's Ranch, and then it comes down to at Timber Trails. There's a pump station, and then there's 2 pump stations up in Big Trees as well. So that's the Sheep Ranch pump station, Timber Trails pump station, Big Trees 1 and 4 pump stations.
Alex, are you the one that's drafting this grant application?
Yes.
So,
Yes, I am. Some of it's already been done by Kevin, and so I'm dusting it off and I have to do the sub applications in mostly, but I have to redo some of it and then have to do what's called a benefit cost analysis, which we do for every project, but it's the state version, the Cal OES version that goes along.
And so I would assume that something like this would be down on the list of things that this, your percentage of success is pretty high, I think, for this type of protection.
Percentage,
Well,
my success in getting grants,
Yeah,
my success.
right, yeah, success on this particular grant application. Are you confident about it or?
Yes, I feel good about it. Yeah.
Okay,
I've
great.
done grants in the past. I was doing more design work in construction management for the last few years,
Mhm.
but I feel good about it.
Cool.
I'm, of course, still new as a director, so the 3.5 million, which would be our contribution, is this something that's in our overall operating budget plan, or is this all new? It'd be new money for us.
Well, I'm going to defer that mostly to Kevin, but we do have a match, right? If you're talking about our match, so we have a water fund and a rate revenue.
Yeah, so we do have a CIP project at both Big Trees 1 and 4. That's in our CIP program. And that money would be, it wasn't for this specifically for Hartley, but that money could be used for the match to the money we have in our
Okay, so no
CIP
real,
program. So we're trying to maximize the money we have by being able to do 4 pump stations for basically the price of one.
It's a great question, because sometimes we get excited about grants, but 25% match, 25% of the law, it's still really not. That's a good time. It means maybe something else in the CIP isn't good. So it's fun, so we have to process.
Yeah, in some of these smaller communities like Subrand with the benefit cost analysis on their own, that's a really expensive project. And to supply the community there. So they allow you to group it with a larger community because it benefits a larger community. So by bringing in timber trails and Big Trees 1 and 4 pump stations, your benefit cost analysis, because there's a lot more population in those areas, they can fund these projects that otherwise couldn't be funded. So by grouping them together and making it an area-wide project, there's a lot more benefit to the project. You can achieve grant funds by doing that.
The benefit process, it's a big part of things.
so if I understand this correctly, we're not gonna have to make any major budget decisions, but we may have to, well, Peter, pay Paul, because this is important and very cost-effective relative.
Yeah, but I think in this case, we'd be Rob, Peter. Just going to send out a project. Something.
Yeah, we were about these pump stations. Yeah, these pump stations have to be redone regardless, and it's on the CIP, so, I mean, that's not, I shouldn't say regardless, but then bringing in the fire component and bringing this masonry buildings in, and they're really, these are, the ones up in Big Trees especially are really high fire zones, and they, yeah, and then the sheep ranch is, it's a wooden flume that goes along basically a flume, small pipe. It goes along the hillside. It's got rock. You can't even walk it to get to the pipe and fix it. So, I mean, it's a huge hazard.
But this sometimes is the calculation that we're having to do. CIP is a living document, and, you know, when the opportunities like this come up, sometimes we do make that determination. The best bang for our buck is actually shifting funds away from one project to another. Those can be difficult decisions.
All right. What do you need from us on this?
We need concurrence.
It sounds like it's not planning to check the over budget numbers in terms of how to generate additional revenue. Sounds like we've got the key to be 75% managers. Big trees is like, not really, not a basis. Supply.
All right, well, we have concurrence of this committee then. So, speak ahead. Okay, moving on to 4G, notice of intent, UPUD, emergency intertime.
Yeah, so I was gonna talk about this project we're working on. I see Matt on the line from Weber, WGA. They're a district engineer for UPUD. So the notice of intent, this is another FEMA grant opportunity under the same disaster declaration that the one we just talked about was under. So whenever there's a disaster, they allot money to this hazard mitigation program, which brings in money to prevent these catastrophic failures of infrastructure that are related to wildfires. The CCWD has been working with UPUD on a joint emergency intertype project. And why it's needed, UPUD relies entirely on wooden flume system from the Utica water source at Hunter's Reservoir. The flume's aging, exposed to fire risk, and vulnerable to failure during storms, droughts, and wildfires. And currently, UPUD doesn't have any backup water supply, so they rely entirely on that system. There's new legislation that requires you to have a backup water supply for systems over a certain size. So the proposed project requires a lot of upgrades to our system in order to supply the demand to UPUD. So we'd have to construct a larger clear well to increase the storage capacity. And then also the chlorine contact time. We'd have to add a third filter. Currently we have 2 filters, 2 million gallons each capacity, 2 million gallons a day. We had to add a third one to have 6 million gallons a day. And then we have to install a 4th effluent pump at the treatment plant in order to pump enough water out of our treatment plants to supply water to them and us. So all those improvements would be covered under this grant application. So a large amount of their grant application, not a large amount, maybe 50% of their grant would go to improving our infrastructure in order to be able to supply water to them. So the upgrades would allow treated water from CCWD to be transferred to UPUD. You can see up here on the map, our systems pretty much connect. We have our treatment plant, there's the water treatment plant, and then their treatment plant. You go slow. So basically, here's a current conveyance system. So it's 27 miles of Gold Rush era, wooden ditches and wooden flumes. So that's how they get the water down to their storage pond. So here's a picture of the wooden flumes. You've probably seen lots of those pictures. Sorry. And then here's the burnt up in the Darby fire. So that's kind of what we're basing this UPUD's based on grant application on. This hazard that happened in the past. There's more of it right there.
Grants not for any of the water conveyance.
Yeah, it would be for pipeline from our system to their system. So we can show that here in a minute. So this is they went in the Darby fire. We had tanker trucks coming from our system, delivering some water down to their system. Around the clock, they hauled water. A picture of dumping into the fire hose from the Nevis Pass system. So they're not too far apart. We can go to the next slide. Just kind of some more. This is what the presentation we gave to FEMA when to kind of explain this, the grant application to them, and they kind of were really excited about the opportunity to potentially fund this project.
It's here, but it doesn't address. You know, it's like, if you. Between. Yeah, there's more, one of the things that is not addressed to. Pretty much all. So, they still have, it doesn't solve all. Still, see, it's been. And intentionally done. We should put for.
If the grant is approved, what's our contribution?
So yeah, so it's a same, they're a disadvantaged community, so there's a potential that it wouldn't be a 75-25, it could be a 90-10. So, the cost share would only 10% of the cost. So that's an opportunity. Like our projects in West Point, our hazard mitigation, the dam raise project that's under the same program. We've been very successful with this program. We replaced 5 redwood tanks in Nevis Pass under this program. We got 100 reservoir, which is in the process of hopefully the final funding for that project. They paid for the design. It's a new raw water treatment plant there. They're paying for our dam raise project in West Point, Wilseyville. So we've been really successful at this front on all our projects, and they've replaced other redwood tanks in the past. So this is kind of the outline. There's 2 options. So a few years back, we completed the Reach 1 pipeline. It went down Highway 4 and ended at our last customer there. You kind of see where that is. So that one option would be it'd be hard, but you go down Highway 4 with a pipeline through the narrow and Utica grade, and connect right into their distribution system. That would be probably the most robust system. The other one would be the backside of Forest Meadows. You go cross country. There's existing road that goes to their treatment plant, and you could send water out of the backside of Forest Meadows. Smaller pipe, maybe not as much flow, but we're working the hydraulic models together. UPED is doing a hydraulic model, and we're doing a hydraulic model. So that kind of give us the best solution. It could be that we have to do both of them, but that's probably not what's going to happen. But
Can you clarify what I understand the advantage to UPD, the advantage to us is get extra filtration.
Yeah, a couple of, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The extra filtration, not necessarily an advantage for CCWD. We have adequate treatment plant capacity for our customers. But we would need that added for this addition or this much additional water. Our clear well at Hunters is a huge concern of ours. So if that gets replaced as a part of this project, that takes a huge project off of our CRP. So there's an advantage there for CCWD. Water rights utilization aspect of the beneficial for CCWD. So there's and I think just in general, you know, the role as the county water district, you know, any time we can find a way to support what interests are usually find with our districts.
Yeah, and they would be the, UPD would be the lead agency, so they'd be spending the time putting the grant application in. Obviously, we'd have to give them some support on our facilities. But they'd be doing the heavy lift on the grant application.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just,
Should to move forward.
yeah, we have a blanket, board resolution that allows staff to apply for all these hazard mitigation grants without taking to the board. But we like to keep you guys involved, informed on stuff that we're spending work efforts on.
Michael, I have a question for you. On the Reach One project, I recall that there was a decision that was made to run a 6-inch pipeline down Highway 4 in anticipation of something like.
No, it's a Reach One is 12-inch transmission and, the original plans have it back down to 8 inches, I think. The last time. Back to 12 inches. I wish, in my perspective, we made it 20 inches. For the whole length, but that might have caused some issues, and some additional costs for CCWD at the time. But it also was made supply of but I think now what we have being a 12-inch, brand new 12-inch main, it's been functioning great since we put it in, thanks to Jared and the team that is project, just like his other projects, on top of the contractor, and making sure we have a good project. But it's going to have its limitations.
So my recollection is flawed then that there was additional piping that was done, or we just increased the size.
We just increased it, I think it was just the last 1,000 feet. Yeah.
Was going downslope.
Yeah, it's 12 inches going down the highway. So yeah, that would be where they could connect on.
No, I think there was some talk at the time, but can we just put a pipe in the train? Well, but
Okay.
And then like Michael said, that, there could be a benefit to Angels Camp in the future. I mean, we have some restrictions on how much flow we can get through the 12-inch pipe, but the UPUDs and Angels Camp distribution systems are pretty close together. So if you get water to UPUD, they could get water down to Angels Camp if there's an emergency on the flume below Murphy's.
yeah, so one clarification, the presentation says 27. So that's from Hunters to Angels Camp. It's about half an hour between Hunters and Murphy's downstream of Murphy's. Line distance.
So we may not be able to quantify this now, but if you did get this pipeline put in, it would represent like 2% of the volume of the ditch and plume of the.
2%, probably more than 2%.
I don't know how much the thing carries.
It depends if max out the point. But 90 CFS, we shouldn't. I don't think they run more than 60. So but normal operations. That's good water actually. So see what does. So that's a lot of water. But again, that's UPD water, Angels Camp water, and UPD irrigation customers. That's UPD's
residential, municipal water and I think it's much of the municipal water that. That's probably know, but I think they use about irrigation that we produce.
And then once it goes through the, Angel powerhouse, it just goes back in the creek.
Yes, once it's discharged from Angels, it's back into free, to where it's back to CCW.
Storing the. All right. So, I'm thinking that we should continue to collaborate with UPUD.
Yeah, it's been a good collaboration. Appreciate Matt's help with it, and Jessica's been great. From their board that they support it. So.
Okay, we have an item number 5 called old business, and Sam is here to talk to us about developer projects.
Thanks, Matt, for jumping on.
Good afternoon, directors. I'll just be brief, just go over the current development projects that we have throughout the district. The biggest one is CB Developers out of Copperopolis. They have a few pending projects that they've been working with the district on. The biggest one is the Town Square lift station. They have done some improvements to the wet well and the electrical system upgrades that they've conducted at the lift station. And those lift stations are in terms with the county, what the county has asked, and the district has helped improve. And we have our inspector or electrical staff that will be going on site and making sure that they've been done to the district standards in the coming weeks. We have a meeting scheduled with them coming up, and in terms of along with that, we have a force main design and the lift station design that they'll be working on to convey the sewage from the lift station and in Town Square all the way to Saddle Creek lift station, so that can be conveyed to the wastewater treatment plant. Also, as part of this, these improvements they have to improve on the Reed's Turnpike pump station, which is a water pump station that conveys water to the sea tank or Copperopolis tank in Copperopolis main town, which is about 500,000 gallon tank, and that is all part of the CB scope. And then we the other projects that we have are mostly in the general land service area, which one of them is the General Land Elementary School, which is Calaveras Unified School District is the primary or the lead agency on that project, where they're making improvements to the wastewater treatment plant, and that will be replaced by a lift station on site that would convey sewage from the Jenny Lind Elementary School and pump it up through an intermediate lift station all the way to La Cantana wastewater treatment plant via conveying it to Huckleberry lift station. They have a bid. We had a bid walk, pre-job walk last week. Yeah, that was attended by our staff, and the bid opening is on July 29th of this year, so that will give us an idea. This has been long awaited project that district had on the books with CUSD. So we're kind of excited about this one. Then we have LGI Homes, that is 156 unit residential development that is happening in Valley Springs. That also ties in with the Jenny Lind Elementary School in the sense that we are, the developer is going to be constructing 2 lift stations. One is to convey sewage from some of the higher areas or the lower segment of the subdivision to another lift station that will be on site. That will also collect sewage from the Jenny Lind Elementary School. and from that point on conveyed to the Huckleberry lift station. This is the force main project on this lift state, on this subdivision is to begin in the coming month of August. We're expecting that they have a contract with Tykert Construction, and Tykert's been on site. They've done some USA work, and they've been in talks with us, and we've been receiving submittals from them to make some progress on this. There's another project that I don't have listed on here, which is for the Gold Creek Phase 3. That project was done by that project was completed per district standards. We have not accepted it yet. We're waiting on the developer to kind of reinvent that project or what they want to do with that project. They have cut out the pads and everything is ready to go. It's just been dormant for a few years now.
Do you recall how many years ago that the Jenny Lind Elementary School force main first proposed to us?
It's on my time here.
It's been, I believe it was 2018, looking at the past one. Yes, sir.
Just for your information, the Jenny Lind Elementary School, very large elementary school down in Florida Springs. And when the school was built, they were not proceeding with sewer connection, so they did. Is that like a pre-treatment of anything?
It's a full treatment, but treatment plant.
But it was all on site. It came to us in 2018. We're wringing their hands about the price of maintaining and operating the facility. It's just not. So they got a grant, decided the grant.
Yes, sir.
To put in this. It's 10,000 feet of pipeline. That's about 19,000, I believe.
So it's 3 miles, right? Yeah, 3.
But and it goes along Berkesee over in Valley Springs. It has some potential to add some customers along the line for the district too. But anyway, it's really it's been a slow moving project, but I'm glad to see that it's come to the forefront.
Yes, sir.
Good.
It'd be a good addition to the system.
Yeah, they are gonna have to go back for more money, similar to our water board funded project in West 20, where by the time they get the bid out, the cost of the project has gone up so much that the original grant is no longer adequate. And so their approach is to award the contract to the lowest bidder and then not start work there until they go back to the water board. Depending on how much that the contract is, they'll go back to the ordinance. They'll use some of the fully funded project, which based on our past experience and what the water board is trying, just is it's a good 8 months usually before the term of approval around. But before the water board will sit down and it's the school district has no resources.
Gentlemen, no question. The FEMA grants that we're looking at, how is politics in Washington affecting future roads? We've seen.
Is there going to be a FEMA next year?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's we laugh, but that's when that's going to discussions. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty there about whether that program will continue to exist. They've already eliminated one of their larger grant funding programs. And so whether the source it continues to be available, I think there is definitely uncertainty. It's wise for us to continue to pursue this. If that source of funding goes away, especially like with the this is a state law for this one, yeah, this one, but with the, especially with the projects, we would be able to shop that project to potentially, hopefully something else fills that space, but if not,
it's a candidate potentially for water board funding as well, or have that project ready for some of the funding.
Question. Okay, going back to this, the Reed's Turnpike booster station. There's other complications about, the owner's approval, extending the easement, some staking that needs to be done there. Is that in progress? Is that?
Yes, we're hoping so. That's the developer's responsibility to do that. So we're waiting to finish that.
Okay. And any movement in Gold Creek is dependent upon the developer performing. This. All right. Aren't you glad you came today?
I know, it's interesting stuff to me.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't step on your toes.
All right, thanks, Sam. General manager's comments.
Engineering wise, the only thing I will mention is we closed the infrastructure loan, which took longer than expected and was harder than usual. Harder than previous loans. USDA has added significant additional hoops that we have to jump through now. But we did get that closed after the board approved the updated package at the last board meeting. Closed today, actually. So the funds are wired and we're doing final processing of the single contract for the sleeping project, the transmission project in Potter. Projects. It's on this to spend money as fast as we can. That's all I have to know.
Okay, then when the fire chiefs were here, the gentleman that was from Palo Alto talked about an Aquan. I wrote it on AKWAN. Was that Aquan system? You know anything about that?
Yeah, he and I have talked about it in the past, and it's basically, it's almost like a digital fire flow testing apparatus, which uses significantly less water. They're expensive. The period of time that we discussed purchasing one, the district wasn't in a position to get one. But Pat and I were just talking over through the break about we're going to revisit those. They were, the last time we had this discussion, it was a couple of years ago, they were about $6,000.
With the couple, you use one, but it's mobile.
Yeah. So for a fire flow test, generally what you do is you measure the flow at one hydrant. You've got the key hydrant you want to monitor. And then you have folks positioned at key locations within the system, normally at a fire hydrant also. And what you're doing there is you're monitoring the reduction in pressure in the system. And I think you heard the fire marshal Parks, John Parks, that was the person that you were talking about, you referred to, Russ. He talked about we never go below 20. Well, that made me feel really good because that's the regulatory compliance point for your water system.
He didn't say that.
Well, yeah, right. He said we talked to the boss first.
Yeah, they have an alert.
Yeah.
They may go below.
Right. And so that is
But
really,
it's good to hear that they're mindful of that. I agree.
yeah. So that's the component that we're watching for during a fire test. Is where are you flowing at 20 PSI? And so that's why it's really important that we just don't say, hey, fire folks or concerned citizen, go out and flow test some fire hydrants, because there's a direct impact to the quality of the system and the potability of the water supply related to a fire flow test. And so if this device can help, speed it up and make it easier, we'll take a look. We're not, we'll take any kind of technology. We're not afraid of that. Sure.
Only 6,000, huh?
Yeah. I mean, and
Look at that a couple of years ago. I seem to recall.
yeah, remember that? It's like an Acculon is the acronym. I'll pull up, I have a cut sheet on it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
just. Yeah, it was just one of those items that, yeah, at the point, at that point in time. Purchase.
Like you said, on labor costs.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely that. We got it. For sure. Yep, exactly. That's right.
It was really very gratifying to me to hear the words of praise from the guys. Being the gold standard in water districts. That's really good.
It's a big deal.
Just we need to spread the word. Good stuff.
Hmm.
Do you have,
Exactly.
do you have anything that you want to propose for a future agenda item? Okay, I don't either. So, seems like that we're at the end of this meeting. Next committee meeting shall be, we have an idea?
What are we in July? September, so first Tuesday in September would be the regular schedule, though that's usually the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Did you say September 9? Okay, so our next meeting will be September 9th at 2:00. And this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you.